Councillors, chief officers, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding to receive the worshipful, the Mayor of Knowsley, Councillor Jackie Harris.
Please be seated. Colleagues, welcome to this meeting and welcome to everyone in the public gallery. Can I remind everyone that all mobile phones should be turned to silent for the duration of this meeting, and can I ask all members to ensure that they use their microphones. Please note that, as usual, the Council will be filming and recording this meeting. This will include people sitting in the public gallery, and a copy of the film will be uploaded to the website. Can I also refer to everyone to the order of the papers that has been placed in front of them and on each seat in the public gallery. Item 1 of the minutes agreed. Item 2, declarations of interest.
Madam Mayor, all interest will be recorded in the minutes.
Thank you. Mail engagements. Can you please note these on the order paper? Recognition of community achievements. Colleagues, I am sure you will all be aware that in the recent Queen's Birthday Honours list, the Member of Parliament for Knowsley, George Howard, was made a Knight Bachelor, and on behalf of the Council, I offer our congratulations to Sir George on the well-deserved honours. Thank you. Councillor Graham Morgan, I understand you wish to say a few words.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, I just wanted to take a moment to recognise Bernie Green, who will be retiring from the Council at the end of this month. Bernie is with us here tonight in the public gallery. Bernie, if you'd like to stand up. Thank you. Bernie joined Knowsley Council almost 22 years ago in 1997 as a HR manager in finance, and since 2014 he's been a very valued Assistant Executive Director. During his time with the Council, Bernie has played an important role in managing and steering the Council through lots of issues relating to HR, including the negotiations with trade unions and large-scale restructures, and also key changes in our customer and IT services. I know that Bernie, when he leaves, will be sadly missed by everyone. Colleagues, I'm sure that you'll join me in thanking Bernie for his commitment to the Council and wishing him a happy and healthy retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Can I invite now Councillor Jane Ashton, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, for a number of years now, council employees have been participating in Dress Down Fridays. This is an initiative where staff can make small donations to a charity or good cause in return for dressing down for work in more casual clothes on a Friday. This idea came from the staff themselves and is run by 5 officers who volunteer in their own time to ensure that all the donations are passed on to the charities or good causes that are nominated via the annual staff vote. And I'm pleased to say, Madam Mayor, one of our volunteers is here in the council chamber tonight. The initiative has gone from strength to strength, and I'm delighted to be able to report an incredible £38,000 has been donated by council staff over the last 4 years. This shows what a fantastic achievement the Dress Down Friday initiative is. Madam Mayor, it's important to note that this is not the only voluntary charitable donation that our employees make. The Dress Down Friday donations are separate to other staff collections that take place throughout the year for good causes such as Comic Relief, BBC Children in Need and Macmillan, to name but a few. Many employees also contribute to the Mayor's Charity Fund, which, as you know, has a proven track record for supporting a variety of charities and good causes within our borough, raising just under £75,000 over the same 4-year period. One previous beneficiary of the Mayor's Charity is Willowbrook Hospice, and it just so happens that Willowbrook is one of the charities that council employees have chosen to support this year through the Dress Down Friday initiative. Madam Mayor, you will be well aware of the tremendous work of Willowbrook Hospice, who are located in Prescott and care for patients with life-limiting illnesses. Opening in 1977, to date, they've cared for over 9,000 patients, and the care they offer is free to those patients, but not free to provide. Therefore, donations such as those from the council's employees and the Mayor's Charity are vital and allows them to provide this much needed service. Madam Mayor, I'm sure you will join me in welcoming a representative from Willowbrook Hospice here tonight in the public gallery and thank them for their important work that they do. In closing, Madam Mayor, I'm pleased to announce that the Dress Down Friday initiative has raised £883 to be donated to the hospice, and I'm sure you will join me in thanking the council employees for their kind donation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You got it in your wallet, yeah.
Don't drop it. Go. Set up the camera. All together.
Item 4 on the agenda, colleagues, is no public questions. Item 5, part of the presentation by Knowsley CCG. I invite Dr Andrew Price and Miss Diane Johnson to address the council with the presentation.
Thank you very much for inviting us here today to do this presentation. We are a double act, so Diane is going to kick off and then I'm going to continue.
Okay, so just to give a very brief overview and a bit of a reminder for some of yourselves about the CCG. The CCG covers a population of registered patients, so they are the people registered with any one of the 25 practices that are within the Knowsley Borough boundary. and that's 166,500 most recent number. The CCG then is responsible for planning, buying and monitoring most healthcare services for the population that are registered with the practice. And the annual budget for the CCG for this particular year is £322 million. And like everyone really, we are experiencing significant pressures and increasing pressures due to demand for services, an increase in ageing population, as I think we all know. And due to that, we do have to also achieve efficiencies. So the financial gap in this particular year is £7.2 million. So within what we do, we've got to be able to find that resource or fit. Really looking more at how we can become more efficient and effective to close that gap, so that we can balance the books. Our priorities then, it's a national health service, as I think we all know, and that means that generally a lot of the direction, if not all the direction, is set nationally, and obviously you can implement that locally. So we do have nationally set targets and priorities. Urgent care is one of them, and in particular the 4-hour A&E target, which none of the local organisations are achieving at the moment and haven't done for a couple of years. In fact, I think the only one actually is Alder Hay that does achieve a target, but the other Kew, Whiston, Aintree, Royal, that they don't. And we're all working very hard as a system to that, including with yourselves as a council. And that work, we do work very well on that, but it is a system issue, not just a Knowsley issue. So we can do well, and we do well, but the A&E target system. Elective care, so these are people's operations or outpatients appointments, then there's an 18-week referral to treatment time target. And again, we were very close to that this year, although there were some difficulties at the Royal Liverpool Hospital in particular, with theatres, and you know, obviously they've got to work in facilities that they were probably not intending working in at this particular time, so that's having an impact. Cancer waiting times, so there are waiting times for people to get referral to treatment and then definitive treatment, as it's called, throughout that pathway, and also a real need for us to increase the number of people who have an early diagnosis. There are 4 stages, and if we can get more people diagnosed in stage 1 and 2, then that's better for their outcomes and their long-term outcomes, as we say. Mental health and learning disabilities, so we know there's quite a problem in Knowsley in these areas, and historically in the health service, the funding to mental health and learning disabilities is not, proportionately at the same level as for more physical and acute care, but that's been balanced now with the mental health investment standards, so we're starting to bring that investment up. Children and young people, and we include in that mental health and wellbeing, so there's some concerns there, as we know. And we want to really invest. We've been investing, we're going to invest more in young people's mental health in particular, eating disorders and services such as that. And obviously we have special educational needs and disabilities to send work, which we're carrying on with at the moment, and investing more in improving the neurodevelopment pathway. Access to general practice, so people do want to see their GP when they would like to see their GP. And Knowsley was actually rated really highly in a recent national survey about access to GP practice. So although people often feel that they're not able to get in the standard across the country, it shows that we are one of the better performing areas. And also that means we've got to improve digital access. So how can people get access to healthcare when they need it and get advice, be it through e-consultations or other mechanisms that we can use. Antibiotic prescribing, so Knowsley is, I think, once again, the in not a positive way. So we prescribe the second highest level of antibiotics in the country, in Knowsley. And people will say, oh, well, there's various issues in Knowsley, but when you actually standardise that, and when you compare it to like sort of peer group organisations, CCGs and boroughs, then we are still the worst fund in that area. So we've much work to do there, and to do with the public as well, really, that work, because as Dr. Price tells, antibiotics do not have any impact on viruses and other illnesses that will actually go in a reasonable time period if people just let that work out. Hospital system, and I know we do spend a lot of money in the hospital system because a lot of people do go to hospital, so we pay for the care that they get. Part of this year, with an increased allocation of money for the NHS, we were very much asked to increase our plans with hospitals so that we can try and get that system in balance for the start of 2020-21, so we get a really good foundation to build on with the new long-term plan. So that was a sort of deliberately and planned move to try and improve the whole system, because if people, as we know, are concerned about the balance and whether they've got a deficit, then it's not the best place to start to implement new plans. So that's the drive. And as part of all of that, and the long-term plan, which was published in January, and it's a 10-year plan, but we've all been asked to produce a 5-year local borough-based plan, for place-based, by autumn, the end of autumn this year, and that has to play into the Cheshire and Merseyside Health and Care Partnership plan, and that then goes back up to the centre in the NHS to produce an overall implementation plan. So the NHS long-term plan is the key work that we do. So we're dealing with today, and we're delivering our operational plan for 1920, but we have to prepare for the future. And so it's a nice slide. It's very simple. So it's condensed a very large document into some key summary areas. So you can see we're going to do things differently through a new service model, and Dr. Price is going to talk about that shortly. Take more action on prevention and health inequality. So get more involved in that, get more upstream with prevention, and improve care quality and the outcomes for the major conditions. So we were talking just before about cancer as an example. We really do need to improve the outcomes for local people there. Ensuring that NHS staff get the backing that they need, so really supporting our staff and making better use of digital and technology and data. So I think sometimes in the NHS we're not at the forefront of using the technology that's available, so we need to do that better. And ensure we get the most out of taxpayers' investment in the NHS, and that's the real another key drive that we've got to work on. It's got to be efficient and effective, and therefore a lot of the things that we look to do are to increase that. I'm now going to hand over to Dr. Price, who's going to talk about the new service model.
Okay, thank you very much. So, as a GP, I'm pleased to say that primary care is very much at the heart of the new service model and long-term plan that's been published by the NHS. And the aims of that really is that everyone has the best possible health care throughout their entire life. So from the very beginning through to looking after people when they are ill with long-term conditions, and through to supporting people in older age as well. How are they going to do this? Well, the new show in town is something called Primary Care Networks, and these are really only just beginning. In fact, they came live on the 1st of July, so it really is very much the beginning of this process. And they are the foundation stone for integrated care provision done on a locality footprint. And the idea behind them is very much around prevention, preventing ill health and tackling health inequalities on a local geographical footprint, supporting the NHS workforce and the allied workforce, and maximising technology and data and the use of data. We get lots of data in the NHS, and we're not that good at analysing it and picking out the bits that really matter, so there's a big emphasis on that. And of course, as you'd expect in the NHS, there's a lot of focus on efficiency. So, to put a bit more detail around primary care networks, they're geographically based and will cover all practices within the Knowsley borough and the CCG boundary. They're quite strict about the criteria for networks, so there is a minimum population of around about 30,000 per network, and a maximum of around 50,000, although in some parts of the country they have got bigger networks. But between 30 and 50,000 population is the size that's recommended. and they'll be the footprint around which the community-based team will develop. There will be a strong focus on population health and prevention within that locality, and much more emphasis on joint working. So it won't just be about primary care. This is about social care. It's about all the allied professions that attach in, podiatry, chiropody, dietetics, you name it, it will all fit around in these geographical areas. Initially, there's a little bit of freedom around what primary care networks can focus on, but undoubtedly, because again, this is the NHS, there'll be a lot of central direction that will come down around what they want us to actually do in those networks. So our intention is to try and get moving really quickly so that we do what we want to do rather than be told what we have to do, which does tend to happen. So for Knowsley, as you can see, there's three networks. So Kirby, which is a nice distinct geographical area on its own, West Knowsley, and then East and South Knowsley. And the reason you've got East and South is because South Knowsley is mainly Hale Wood, and the population there is insufficient to form a network on its own. It just doesn't come up to the right criteria. So they've quite happily joined with East Knowsley. And you can see there the resident population and the registered population. It's important to notice the difference because obviously we have quite a lot of patients who don't live within the borough who are still registered in Knowsley practices, and we have a responsibility to all of them. So the next three are very brief, just to really flesh out those three areas. So there's Kirby, there's 6 practices in total, West Knowsley, and then East and South Knowsley. So that kind of is just a flavour of the different areas and how they will work. And as I say, we're really just embarking on this journey now. And we're looking forward to working closely with partners, particularly with the council, around the prevention agenda, because that is key to a lot of the work that we need to do going forward. Okay, I'm going to hand you back to Diane now, who's going to finish off the last bit.
So the long-term plan and the 10-year vision and plan set out is obviously wider than just primary care networks, but we thought that was a really useful area to focus on in quite a short time today, because it really means a lot about you and your communities as well, so it's very pertinent. Just to highlight some other areas then, STPs, still in parts of the country obviously referred to as that, and here in Cheshire Merseyside it's our Health and Care Partnership. They're expected to develop into integrated care systems by April 21, and there are various criteria about that and how that might happen. The ICS, all of those, along with some in the country have already been designated as integrated care systems. They have to have a partnership board, and obviously we do have a partnership group in Cheshire Merseyside, but not specifically a board, it is a partnership. And CCGs as well, there's some comments within the long-term plan about that. So CCGs are expected to have an alignment across the ICS footprint, and they're to become leaner, more strategic organisations. So when you're operating as we do, very locally and focused within Knowsley, and actually then working with partners outside of Knowsley, so St Helens and Knowsley Hospital, clearly we have to work very closely with St Helens and also Holton. So there are various different footprints really in operation, but the idea being that we create new ways of working at locality level. And as such, some of the work that CCGs do at the minute, which would be potentially considered either tactical or operational commissioning, should evolve and devolve down into the localities, the PCNs and areas there, and other partners, including the council. And then the more strategic aspects, so the needs assessment planning and contract on a much bigger footprint across hospitals and so on, should be done at a more strategic level. And the long-term plan states that typically there'll be one CCG per ICS, so one through that integrated care system. But of course there's a huge variety of sizes across the country in terms of these partnership footprints. Some might be the size, small, the size of Knowsley. Others, as we know in Cheshire and Merseyside, quite significant area. So it's typically, is the word to really watch there. And the view really about Cheshire and Merseyside is there will be more than one in Cheshire and Merseyside because of not just the size, but the way patients flow in geography. So bringing us down then to CCG future direction. So as I said, we're meant to become leaner, more strategic organisations. And another driver in that is that our management allowance has been cut. So again, we get set centrally a management allowance, and it's not particularly a large management allowance either. So it's quite tightly managed and so on. So that's been reduced from April next year quite significantly, which again forces us all to start to think about how can we continue to do what we need to do and how do we fit into the new system. So CCGs locally then, as a group, we are in discussion about how best to deliver the reduction in management costs, but again, this leaner strategic approach to commissioning, and then bring in some of those more operational, tactical services into the community area. So I do brief the Chief Executive of the Council, and I will continue to do so on that. It's in real early stages of discussions. We've looked at options, and there were I think 10 or more options that we've looked at locally, and so we are having conversations with particularly the North Mersey area, but still we have to talk to the Mid Mersey area, which is St Helens, Holton and Warrington, because we do have a lot of common work. So we do that. So at the moment we're exploring the fact that we do flow and work well with the North Mersey area. We've got some really good partnership work going in there anyway. So we're exploring that, and that's about as far as we've got at the moment. We're going to explore an option, but we haven't done that exploration. But I will keep the Chief Executive Council briefed on that. Any proposals, though, to change the footprint of any CCG is subject to a national process and is subject to agreement from NHS England. And there is a process that you need to go through, which does involve and include talking to partners. So at that point where everyone's in agreement, we want to do that discussion, then that's what we'll be doing. I think that is it. Yeah, so that hopefully gives a flavour of, very briefly, what is actually quite a big area of work, and just the pertinent things we thought you would be interested in today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Johnson. Thank you, Dr. Place. We're going to have some questions now if you wish to ask a question, but can we have a question, not statements and not urgent questions? Just a statement if you want to ask a question. Thank you. Who's first? Ken McGlashan. Councillor Ken McGlashan.
Thank you, Madam. I'm going to thank you both for an excellent presentation. Brings us fully up to speed with what's happening. Prime Minister's question time today tells us that there's more money going into national health than ever. Now that's a mantra she has. We see this in the council, our budget's cut, your budget's cut, but the mantra is there's more money going in than ever. We're in the people business, you're in the people business. I'm proud to be the chair of our patient participation group, which forms them links. So, a couple of questions. What's the cause of the financial gap? Is it related to acute services, community services, back office functions? What is the strategy to manage this gap, please?
I think the cause is generally what you'd see even within the council, particularly in terms of social care.
Mm-hmm.
So there is an ageing population, and we've been successful in many of our areas of work in the last few years. So there is increase in demand. There's increase in technology in terms of procedures, diagnostics, and all of that sort of work. There is, I suppose it's that demand is the biggest driver, but actually as well staff. So, you know, pay awards, inflation and all of those things. So does the budget increase, or the growth as it's called, rise, you know, to give us sufficient for that? So that's one thing. So actually if you look over the time that we're told that the funding is in, it's not quite getting above that level. So it's a lot of funding, and we're really grateful, and not for 1 minute do we stand. We know that other departments such as the council don't get that growth, but it doesn't generally meet the demand and all of the other pressures I've mentioned. And yet, you know, we ought to attract the best staff and keep our staff, so, and there is a national pay structure, so we do that. Additionally, in Knowsley, though, there is a national formula, and in years not that long ago, it was around deprivation, and it was weighted for deprivation. So Knowsley, both I think for the council and the NHS, got a lot more money then. And the new formula is weighted more around age, although it's been slightly brought up to date in the last year to look at, you know, wider factors such as deprivation, you know, which ought to have seen us do a bit better. So we got growth, but because from the past we are have a distance from target, if you will, so like a target that we should be getting, and if you are 5% above, more than 5% above, then you will not get that full growth. So it brings it, try and bring everybody, so some places have got below the target, and it brings everybody up to target at a rate. So we did get growth, but as I've demonstrated over time, we've looked at all of the activities that we believe we need as a commissioner, and then you get the acute trust saying, well, we've seen growth and we think that. It just comes in with that gap. And that gap, the financial gap I've talked about, isn't just hospitals. So it is across the patch. So even within general practice, there's been changes with the new contract, and the practices used to have to pay their indemnity fees, professional indemnity fees, whereas in, say, other sectors in the NHS, they were paid. So the new contract says that the NHS will pick the cost up, and that's true. So the budget that we got has been reduced by that amount, and that's the way it works. So the pressures are across everywhere. We did get lots of funding, and indeed, you know, we are, when you compare across other boroughs, you know, funding for Knowsley still does remember, then we would rightly argue that the needs of our population are at that very highest level.
Thank you. Can we have Councillor Harvey, Melbourne, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was really pleased when you were talking to your second slide to hear you placing an emphasis on the importance of the provision for mental health. Localising that, if you like, we know that this year CAMS have received an extra £1.5 million investment from Knowsley. The question is, what are we seeing for this, and how is it being monitored? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it is one of those areas, I think, where, you know, it's not always as easy as in other areas to find out what exactly is happening, and by which I mean it's in generally the community area where we don't have the level of data as we might have in the acutes, but we do see that we need to improve, and the provider needs to improve. And one of the interesting things is, how do we broaden out how we can meet the needs of young people? Are we being innovative enough, or are we just tending to stay with the same provider or provision? So we've got investment this year to look very much at children and young people's mental health, and specifically we've got investment for CAMS. But that, for me, is a joint piece of work, because there will be other ways of helping children, young people with these issues. So how do we measure it? Well, we measure it you know, through the contract monitoring that we do every month, and we also measure it with feedback, so we know it's not hitting the spot. I think it's better than it was in some, you know, some elements of the service, but we've much to do. We've really got a lot to do around children and young people, and we are hoping that we can work together in a, you know, in a different way on that, across the whole board, physical as well as mental health and wellbeing.
Thank you. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question for either Dr. Price or Diane. Yes, your PowerPoint presentation was quite impressive. However, I'd made a few notes on that, and one in particular that stood out with regards to your hospital system. You stated that the hospital system has to be financially balanced. Will this be funded by central government, or will this have to be managed locally? And if it does this mean community services are going to suffer? Thank you.
Obviously it's funded centrally down through into the local budgets, as I've set out, and it's our job to ensure that we're efficient and effective and that we can meet the requirements and needs of the population within that budget, so we need to do that. One of the key things around is people, if they go to a hospital, if payment by result, if a person goes to A&E, we'll get a bill. If a person was anywhere in the system, we'll get a bill. We don't generally take from one area to the other. So we've got our community services budget, and we are, I think I have to say, we've got the best track record in Cheshire and Merseyside for being able to manage our resources and balance our books and meet the business requirements of the NHS. And we do that through, I think, what is generally seen and demonstrated as effective planning. The issue, of course, is where a trust is in deficit, then they're not likely to be in the space we need them to be in to get a population budget, as opposed to you get the commissioner, the provider, and the mechanisms for payment, and there's a lot of focus on that. So the aim from Simon Stevens is that we get people in balance, and then we try to get a different contracting method, and we try to see the budget as for the population, not for individual organisations. And that's the real underlying principle of place-based working that we're trying to move to, that the PCNs play a part in. So, pick any of the areas, say Halewood, for example, whilst it's in that network, it's still going to be a locality. It should have a budget, and that should be used in the best interest of the population, whatever that might be, in terms of healthcare and well-being. So if we can move away from what was a very, very clear provider-commissioner split and start to talk about population's budget, if you will, then that's the drive, to get the trust to the point where they are not under extreme pressure because their finances aren't right, because then they might try, well, they will try to balance their books. We all will by means of getting more activity through the door and so on.
Okay, thank you.
To add to your point, though, no, we're not taking money out of the community to fund secondary care.
Okay. Councillor Flatley?
Can I just take you back to when you did the breakdown of the areas, and there was like lists of GPs and things, so I'm a councillor for Bristol and Council, and there's a Tarble. So is that where the doctors are going to be, GPs are going to be based, or happens to do the GPs? What's the rationale behind that? Does that mean you go back?
We'll go back and then it'll help us. Just no it's not working, right? You're telling me the truth there. There's Lynn. Well, there we are. We go back now. Hey, thank you. So you were in east and south if you were looking at Tarble. Yeah, so they're a list of the practices as opposed to their locations as such.
Yeah, so we've got the wards down the side just to try and tie it together, but the practices are not moving, the practices are staying where they are. It's just trying to geographically group them together. And obviously, because of the shape of the borough, the only bit that naturally forms a nice geography is Kirby. So the rest is a little bit of an artificial division, but it's working, and the networks, although they're only just beginning, have actually been working together as groups of practices now for at least 6 months, and it is working well, actually.
Okay. Chris?
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. With the issue of sorry. Try again. I apologise for the coughing before, Madam Mayor. With the shortage of GPs and increased demand for appointments, how will the primary care networks support struggling practices that we have in the borough?
I think the short answer to that is that the model of primary care is changing, and it's already happening actually within our practice. I've been a GP now for 30 years. We started off with 4 GPs and 1 practice nurse, with a population, serving a population of about 11,000. Now we've got 10,500 patients, and we've got 7 GPs, 2 practice nurses, an advanced nurse practitioner, 2 assistant practitioners, and a pharmacist, all working within the practice. So the traditional model of you see the GP for everything is changing already, and you're quite right, where they promised us, I think, 5,000 GPs. There's no sign of them yet. So we've got to look at different ways of working and different models, and that's the kind of way it's going to go forward. The smaller practices through the primary care networks will work much closer with the bigger ones. Maybe at some point there'll be mergers between practices. We don't know. That's for the practices themselves to work that out, because it's not for us to force that on them. So it's a different way of working, basically, is the way we try to tackle it.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Smith, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, a couple of years ago, we had a representative from the CCG at one of our scrutinies, and I remember asking a question, and I was rather alarmed at the answer. So I'd just like to really ask for a bit of an update, if that's okay. Say, for instance, a young person is diagnosed with autism quite early on, and then they move authority, say from Liverpool to Knowsley. The situation back then was that child had to go through the whole assessment again, repeated, basically because one set of clinical experts in Knowsley didn't take what was said in Liverpool, so the whole process had to be gone through again. Ultimately, you know, the child loses up to, say, 12 months education. I was just wondering whether anything has improved in the last 2 or 3 years, or are we still in the same situation where the cooperation between clinical experts from, say, different local authorities is not believed, or it's you know, the person has to be reassessed?
I think the short answer is there have been improvements, so a lot of the areas are working more closely together. And it gets back to what I was saying earlier, people work around their organisation and their organisation boundaries, only their assessment is you know, good enough and valid enough. That's not actually proven by an evidence base, and actually the child and the family are the ones, you know, that are affected most by it. So now what we see is more joined up working and people working across the bigger region, and certainly Liverpool, Sefton and Knowsley do work much more closely on these areas. It's not perfect, and we know there's lots of work to do, but definitely there are those more joined things, and we also in the CCG have a team that does actively get involved and make sure they pull together the assessments and challenge anybody who's saying, well, I have to do it again.
Thank you. Councillor Mooney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions. The primary care network, you say it started last Monday, the 1st of July, yeah. Was this a government decision, or have we made this decision locally? Who will have control of this? I'm concerned that we might have practices that are a little bit more powerful than other practices. So will everybody get their fair share? And will the patients have any say in how these monies are spent? Thank you.
The driver for it is national, definitely, and I forgot what the rest of the question was.
So how was it determined? Was it determined locally in terms of the network?
Yeah, so it's it was determined, in Knowsley we've been very fortunate through our CCG days in that we have a really powerful and strong, what we call a clinical membership group, which meets monthly, which has representatives from every practice within Knowsley. And they kind of hold us to account as a CCG about what we're doing, because CCGs are membership organisations. And through workshops with them, the structure of the networks has been established locally. So although the idea of them has been mandated nationally, it's been very much left to us locally to determine how we do it. Each network has to have a clinical director. So we've got 3 clinical directors, 1 per network, and they've been elected from within each network. So I'd like to think, and I hope, that every practice has got an equal say, whether they're small or big. And so far, touch wood, that's proven to be the case. Was there another part?
Yeah, so there we go. So in terms of the decision making, so the practices were required to come up with their proposal, and we worked very hard with them around that, around the various criteria that's in the documentation that we were given to implement it. We'd also already worked with local people and yourselves around the localities, so our practice has been working in localities, 4 of them, for quite a while, and obviously, it's the nature of the rules that Halewood didn't have a big enough population, so is in a primary care network. So we knew that we talked with Councillor Donnelly, Julie and others, we knew that the fit was probably the best we could get in terms of meeting the criteria and also following some of the ward boundaries, and also with Health Watch to see what their sense check was with it. And then the CCG, that's its primary care committee, made the decision. And the other thing I can tell you is that I think, well, I know now that all of the networks are operating on a 1 practice, 1 vote system, to answer your question about whether the big practices might outvote or overwhelm the small ones. And the drive is to have this bigger, it's like primary care at scale, bigger, more resilient, extended hours, being able to provide those sorts of services better as a bigger group. So it should benefit the population. And I know that the 3 clinical directors are wanting to start an engagement plan shortly, which will involve elected members and members of the public and practice populations.
Thank you. Councillor Connor?
Thank you very much. You talked earlier on about the integration. So my question is, where do you see the Health and Wellbeing Board fitting within the integrated care system?
I think the Health and Wellbeing Board is as it is. It's in terms of how does it fit in the system, which is more the delivery of the services. So it again, using the JSNA and agreeing the joint strategy, it should fit with this locality model because it has previously. So it's almost the delivery of the health and wellbeing strategy along with the NHS plan and all these things, which I think in Knowsley, actually happily, it does all stitch together for us. So it's where it is. It's just that we now need to, at some pace, start to work together in on the ground in the communities with the communities.
Okay. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Councillor O'Mara.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You spoke about the long-term plan, Diane. How's the council going to contribute to the development of this? Because it seems to be, very limited time, and yet it needs proper engagement and consultation.
So we have an executive leaders group, as it is, which is the chief executives of the main partners, which is the council, the CCG, GPs, St Helens and Knowsley Hospitals, Aintree, North West Boroughs, Alder Hay, First Arc, CBS One Knowsley now, and we've been meeting, and we're actually working on a plan, and I'm working with and through that group to try and get the draft plan and then our job then will be to see if people are happy with that and socialise that and see what people feel about it. I think happily for us, it's the plan that we've had, which is a health and social care transformation plan. It fits with the national model, so we agreed as a leaders group we would refresh it. And having then refreshed it to close some of the gaps that are missing from it was children and young people, because at the time there was another transformation programme in place. The Knowsley growth plan was not in it, and also we felt that, you know, should be including housing, also just broadening it out and then back out to people to talk to people about it. But at the moment it's not very early, well it's not, it's refreshing, and therefore the draft will be shared with people. Aiming tomorrow morning it'll come out to people, and then if people feel when they're fed back and we develop it to the point we can bring it out as a meaningful tool to be shaped by everyone.
Thank you. Any further? Councillor Donnelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy 71st birthday NHS and all the services. I'm not saying that you're 71 either of you. But you talked through the presentation about integration, and also here in Knowsley we've called for an integrated health and care system for such a long time, and we as a council are still pushing for an integrated care system, health and social care system. We're hearing the rumours, as you said, about the 10 options, and by the sounds of the rumours that we're hearing from other authorities, you're preferring the Liverpool and Sefton model. And I'm just wondering why you're preferring that model and not doing an integrated health and care system like our neighbouring authority, St Helens, which seems to be working really successful. We as a council are fully open to that integration and talking about that. So if you can give us a bit more of an update on that.
Thanks, Councillor Donnelly. It's interesting about integration. So integration, as we talk about with the model, is that integrated service delivery model. We have indeed looked at a number of options, and the clinical membership group, governing body and the staff have all looked at those. About things that we need to deliver and achieve throughout this, so we've got to have a more strategic, leaner organisation, and that the reduction in running, all the various factors, and want to try and keep a Knowsley focus as well, and making sure that we can deliver what we need to deliver. So that the options appraisal has been carried out and come out with a preferred option, based on a whole host of areas, as I've just said, really. And now the idea is, well, would that work, and how does it work? But equally, there are aspects, and quite a number of aspects of the CCG which will come into the community. So we're looking at what's a strategic CCG as opposed to what would come out into an integrated provision type approach and model that we're talking about. So we're talking about an integrated care delivery model, and that's what that one's about, and then obviously looking at what do we need to do as an organisation to deliver all duties and functions. And even in other local authorities, neighbouring authorities, there will still be the need for that strategic working. So, you mentioned St Helens. St Helens is not the only commissioner of St Helens and Knowsley Hospitals or North West Boroughs. So even if you've got a different model, you've still got to operate at that strategic level. And I just think for us, in terms of Cheshire and Merseyside and the size of it, and then you go into how many strategic commissioning entities would you have, then it's not one, basically, so it'll be more than one. But a lot of the actual work, it's not necessarily all of the money, because obviously we know that a lot of the money goes into hospitals and so on. Now our dream is to bring that back into the community and work together to do it. So we've got to operate on different levels. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at that strategic leaner commissioning entity.
Councillor Ashton, did you indicate to speak?
No, it's been answered, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, at the end, anyone else wish to speak? Okay, can we thank Dr. Price and Diane for their time this evening coming down? Okay, Joint Authorities item 6. We have no questions have been received. Item 7, members' question time. May I to ask the colleagues who wish to ask the questions, Councillor Edna Finneran, to ask the leader a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, can I ask the leader to provide an update into the internship programme and what employers can do to help people with learning difficulties or with disabilities into their employment? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I thank Councillor Edna Finneran for the question. Can I ask Councillor Sean Donnelly to respond, please?
Thank you, Leader, Councillor Finneran, for your question. Madam Mayor, the supported internship programme will be shortly coming to the end of its 3rd year this year. And wow, what a fantastic year it's been. We've seen the interns not just in our council buildings, in our council services, but across the borough working. Out of the 21 learners who have completed in years 1 and 2, 15 of our supported interns are now in paid employment. 3 are volunteering in our community, 1 has returned to college, and 2 are being supported by Enable Knowsley to find paid employment. There were 10 learners on the cohort this year. 5 will be moving into paid employment in September. 1 learner is returning to college and supporting the internship and being supported by Enable Knowsley and working with 4 others to find suitable progression opportunities for them. In the first year, all placements were in the council, but other employees have been engaged this year and more for next year's cohort. These have been through schools, community groups and others within the community. The council have also established a job carving project that will support employees and other places of work to look at their roles and supporting people with LD into them by carving other jobs into one job that is manageable for a person with a learning disability or disability. This has been proven an excellent track record, especially within Fair Star, All Saints and Eastcroft Primary School. Some of the quotes that we've had back from these employees have been fantastic and have supported people into employment. Our young people and our interns who've been through the programme have brought a new life to the work environment for everyone involved who've supported them, but also within the community. Eastcroft, All Saints and Fair Star have also offered our 3 people some employment opportunities going forward. This has been a fantastic opportunity and we wish to continue this further, but by encouraging more businesses. And if you know any of the businesses that would like to take part, please contact one of the council officers in the supported employment or Enable Knowsley team, and they'll be happy to help and support a business to get more people with learning disabilities into employment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dole. Councillor Kai Taylor, wishes to ask the leader a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I noticed with great interest Snows the Council appears to have had a stall at one of the world's leading exclusive property development gatherings, MIPIM. Could the leader please explain or give a brief overview as to why Knowsley Council had representatives attend this conference, how many councillors or officers attended, the total cost to taxpayer as a result of this trip, and finally what benefits he believes this trip to the south of France had for local residents? Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm happy to answer Councillor Taylor's question. We have been very clear in recent years of the need to develop and grow our borough. We need to attract new investment, businesses and people to Knowsley. If we fail to grow, we will no longer be able to afford key public services which our local people depend on. And the challenge is that we are not the only place just trying to do that. So with many places across the country all competing for investments, it is obviously very important that the investors know about what we have to offer here in Knowsley. and that's why we attended MIPIN and other events. Obviously, colleagues, it would be foolish to expect investment just to come to us without us having to told anybody what we have to offer. For those of you who don't know, MIPIN is an annual global conference which brings together more than 25 property and investment professionals in one place. The conference has been running for 30 years now and is well known as one of the most important such events in the calendar. Major cities like Liverpool and Manchester have exhibited at the show for many years with great success. For example, it was a meeting between Mayor Joe Anderson and the Mayor of Bordeaux at MIPIN that led to the development of the Bordeaux Wine Festival in Liverpool, which is now in its second year and has been very successful. It was also a discussion at MIPIN which led to Homes England recently relocating to Liverpool to help speed up the delivery of new homes in the city region. At this point, I want to correct Councillor Taylor's question though. Knowsley did not have a stand at MIPIN. The stand was booked and arranged by the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority, and we nominated 2 delegates to attend to show our important partnership with the Combined Authority. We did not pay for our own stand, and the total cost of travel and attendance was just less than £4,000. In fact, we were invited to be part of the Liverpool City Region delegation because we have so much to be proud of. We have secured major projects and investments such as the Knowsley Garden Village, the new Liverpool FC training ground and the Shakespeare North Playhouse. Some of the investments is coming direct from the Combined Authority, so it's only fair for us to return that support by helping communicate the benefits of the city region as part of the delegation. We even delivered a Pacific Knowsley focused event at the show. We made our mark and told delegates about the opportunities and assets we have here in Knowsley. And if you haven't already seen it, colleagues, this was the film that was shown at the conference. this film tells a very powerful story about what we have to offer here in Knowsley. So why shouldn't we tell the world about it? In terms of the benefits to our residents and community, we have secured huge levels of investment by telling people about the benefits of investing in Knowsley. In terms of our relationship with the combined authority alone, this has included £8.5 million for the Prescott connectivity scheme, including all of the public realm work between Prescott Station and Eccleston Street Station in the town centre. £10.5 million towards the Shakespeare North Playhouse in Prescott, £12.1 million to build new roads and infrastructures in support of the Helsley Garden Village, £18 million worth of highway improvement schemes across the borough over the last 2 years or so. Just for those schemes, they add up to £50 million, but there's so much more, as you've seen in the film. I think you'll agree that's not a bad return on the £4,000 we spent to attend MIPIM. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Kite-Taylor, you'd like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for Councillor Morgan for answering my previous question and showing us all his video, which, as lovely as it may be, I'm not sure why it required such a large delegation to go over to be able to press the play button at the conference, but hey ho. Moving on, in November 2017, Knowsley Council took part in a corporate peer challenge organised by the Local Government Association. The review recommended a number of possible changes Knowsley Council could take. Could the leader inform Council what actions Knowsley Council has taken to implement the recommendations, and has the Council invited the LGA to carry out a follow-up visit, which is usually expected within 12 to 24 months of the original visit? Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank Councillor Taylor for the question and also for the comments that he made just earlier. When he said a huge delegation, two I don't think is huge, and I think he's absolutely gutted he asked the question after what we've just shown what we're doing within Knowsley. So the Council did indeed invite the Local Government Association to conduct a corporate peer challenge in November 2017, and I'm a bit surprised there is a question about it nearly 2 years later, but I'll try to clear things up for Councillor Taylor. The outcome of the peer challenge was reported in full council at our council meeting in March 2018, and the report is still available on our website. Amongst the many successes, the peer challenge team noted that the council has made major improvements in the highest risk areas of adult and children's social care. The peer challenge made a few minor recommendations for us to consider. These were not significant, colleagues. For example, they suggested we should refocus on the way the performance and risks are reported. Many of those recommendations are already underway at the time of the peer challenge, so the recommendations were more or less telling us just to keep going. The action plan we developed in response was also reported at the same council meeting in March 2018. So Councillor Taylor, you can read it if you want more details. There will be a follow-up visit before November, but that's not the same as having another full review. The follow-up is about seeing if we need any more support in implementing the recommendations, and as I've already said, they've already done that. In fact, the team from the LGA know that we have made major progress and have cancelled a couple of meetings aimed at arranging the follow-up visits, so it is clearly not a big concern for them, and I'm sure that it's quite right that they are focusing their efforts on other local authorities who are in a much worse positions than we are. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Malone, wish to ask a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the leader. Following the decision to save the parks taken by the Labour Control Council in 2018, can the leader of the council outline the investment we have made in our parks, and moving forward, what plan we have to further improve them?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I thank Councillor Malone for the question. Can I ask Councillor Shelley Powell to respond, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Malone for the question. I'm delighted to share with you an update on some of the outstanding improvements that we've secured since we saved our wonderful parks and green spaces. This council, in working with our partners and communities, has since secured £9.3 million into Knowsley's parks. This investment has improved their quality and accessibility and social health and wellbeing benefits, including Bowring Park restoration, a new cultural, education and leisure offer in the park to increase the number of visitors, whilst providing volunteering and training opportunities. Mill Dam Park, a new environment centre at Mill Dam Park with community space and a cafe. Henley Park with an installation of a new play area. Eddie McCardle playing fields, working with Liverpool Football Club to improve the facilities for local football clubs. Creating new parks and green spaces with our housing developers such as Tower Hill Park, Kirby and the Bridgefield Forum site in Halewood. Madam Mayor, our future plans include improvements to existing parks and green spaces, as well as create new spaces to meet our residents' needs, such as creating a new community hub at Courthay Park, deliver new play areas at Jubilee Park, Bowring Park, Tower Hill Park and Mill Dam Park, planting 4,000 new trees across Knowsley, improving infrastructure and creating new pathways and cycleways at Halewood Park, Statmoors, Acornfield Plantation and Field Lane Park, provide sports pitch improvements and new facilities at Lord Derby Playing Fields, Prescott and Halewood Leisure Centre, master planning Halewood Doorstep Green, Oak Plantation and Millbrook Millennium Green, and creating brand new parks and green spaces at Halsney Garden Village and within the east of Halewood site. I'm proud to report that all 18 of our green spaces retained their Green Flag Awards in 1819. We will do the same this year, gaining national recognition for community involvement in the management, operation and improvement of our accessible green spaces. Knowsley's green spaces had over 43,000 residents attending events and activities during 2018-19, such as the Knowsley Flower Show, community fun days and large-scale sporting events such as Born to Run and Cyclocross. During the year, over 27,000 hours were donated by our volunteers to support the upkeep of the borough's variety of parklands. Volunteers have supported campaigns such as the Keep Britain Tidy Great British Spring Clean-up and the Global Nature Green Challenge, which saw cities around the world competing to see who can make the most observations of nature, find the most species and engage the most people. Our residents undertook over 4,000 observations of local wildlife species in Knowsley, helping the Liverpool City region to be ranked number 2 in this country. We also stepped in where the private sector failed to rescue Bowring Golf Course, one of the oldest municipal golf courses in the country. Our prompt action saved the course from decline and closure whilst protecting the jobs of the skilled staff who maintain this site. I think that we can all agree that all our parks and green spaces are now in safe hands with this Labour-run council, which will continue to work with our volunteers to further invest in improvements that will benefit all of our communities across our borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Ian Smith, I'd like to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a very serious question where I don't think a supplementary would have been out of order, but we'll see what the answer is. Is the leader of the council as concerned as I am about the health and welfare of the tenants living in the old watch factory, as it is a building clearly not fit for purpose?
Thank you. Councillor Orban.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Smith for the question, and can I ask Councillor Brennan to respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Smith, for your question. In terms of a response, what I'd like to say firstly is that the Council is aware of a number of issues that have arisen in relation to the extensive refurbishment of the watch factory to bring this important listed building back in use. So in terms of response from what's gone on, and in terms of the background, Councillor Smith, you've previously raised these concerns with the Council and with Knowsley Housing Trust on previous occasions, to which you've received full and thorough responses, setting out the actions being undertaken to address those concerns. Furthermore, these matters were raised and responded to in detail following the Prescott Area Liaison briefing that took place on the 10th of June. And furthermore, we understand, Councillor Smith, you have since met with senior representatives of KHT at their offices on the 2nd of July. I'm pleased to provide assurances to the Chamber that Knowsley Housing Trust, as the owners of the building, are currently dealing with all of this, with a number of the quality issues affecting the residents, particularly in the listed part of the building. We are aware this includes some leaks in windows and control of heat through those windows. In terms of the action, we are advised that it is KHT's intention to replace a number of those windows to address any leaking and enable improvements to thermal and UV ratings. KHT have also been working closely with the Council to ensure these replacements are acceptable in terms of the important heritage aspects of the building, while proactively dealing with the impact on those residents through a number of interventions focused on ensuring their well-being, which is the most important thing. I am also aware that a number of interim measures have been undertaken in the meantime, such as the installation of blinds, as well as all that action that's been taking place. We understand that the watch factory is, and I will repeat again, fit for purpose, and indeed occupancy. And it is really disappointing, I feel, that Councillor Smith has been alarmist in his view, in his question, as all the matters he and the local residents have raised are being actively addressed by KHT, followed with action. Furthermore, should Councillor Smith wish to understand further detail of the proposed remediation works, I would suggest he continues dialogue with KHT, who have been entirely cooperative to date in responding to the issues raised. Thank you.
You cooperated.
Thank you, Councillor.
Ask the question.
Yes, thank you, Councillor.
About the heritage people, are they cooperating?
Can we have one speaking, please? Thank you. Councillor Joanne Bay wishes to ask a question.
There is no doubt that the massive cuts this council has borne from central government has resulted in difficult decisions being made and cuts to some services. I'm sure we can all agree that the third sector voluntary services we all have in our respective communities are proving vital in stepping up to manage these gaps, and that we all know of local groups who are literally community champions. Would this council consider excuse me, introducing an annual acknowledgement and validation of all these champions in the form of an event such as an informal afternoon tea, for example, or something similar? Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Burke for the question, and can I ask Councillor Ashton to respond?
Thank you, Leader, and can I thank Councillor Berg for the question. Madam Mayor, I'm sure Councillor Berg, from her own experiences with Friends of Eaton Street Park, will acknowledge the great store that the Council places on the skills, commitment and fantastic achievements of the many volunteers across Knowsley who contribute so much to our communities. I'm delighted that Councillor Berg shares that view and recognises their significance in helping the Council to maintain vital public services to our most vulnerable citizens. We continue to do this in the face of the austere, socially unfair and unrelenting public sector cuts by this Tory government. Madam Mayor, this Council has been a huge advocate for volunteers, and I'm pleased to say we have a very strong tradition of celebrating their endeavours and in supporting them to achieve their aspirations. And as you are only too aware, we routinely do so by inviting them for tea with the Mayor, involving them in our mayor-making celebrations, formally recognising their achievements here in this chamber, issuing letters of gratitude from the leader of the council, highlighting their many successes in the Knowsley news and our social media platforms, involving them in celebrating our 18 Green Flag Park Awards and the wonderful Knowsley Flower Show, helping their efforts by targeting the council's community fund and, as acknowledged in Councillor Shelley Powell's response, recognising their wide-ranging contributions alongside this council's continued investment in maintaining the borough's parks and open spaces. This council manages its limited and reducing budgets very well indeed. As much as we do have to ensure we do have to ensure that such gestures are affordable, as to not place undue extra burden on the council's finances, as Councillor Beggs already alluded to earlier in her question. That said, Madam Mayor, if Councillor Begg, or indeed anyone else, has any suggestions about how we can celebrate our volunteers' efforts, then please do let me know. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton. Item 8, we are on to, can I ask Councillor Sean Donnelly, I believe you have a motion you wish to move.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, I think we all agree that there is no place in our society for intolerance or bigotry. Oh, sorry, can I move the motion? Sorry. There you go, sorry.
So eager. So eager. Okay, so Sean, you've moved the motion.
I'll say it.
Second, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A pleasure in seconding that motion.
Now, Councillor Donnelly is to speak on this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies. Colleagues, I think we all agree there is no place in our society for intolerance or bigotry. In fact, in January last year, members unanimously agreed to a motion setting out a definition of anti-Semitism, which included the statement that the council believes that everyone is equal of their ethnicity, religion or race. The definition of Islamophobia here before you is a motion developed by the All-Parliamentary Group on British Muslims following a 6-month inquiry launched in 2018, where the contributors were heard for examples from academics, lawyers, local politicians, social activists, campaigners, groups from across the UK and individuals within the Muslim community. It is clear that the definition has not been created to hinder free, unfair debate, nor an attempt to hinder counter-terrorism efforts. Rather, the definition has been created simply to give some meaning to the word and nature of the phrase Islamophobia. We are all aware of the hate crime in the rise of Britain, and adopting the definition and a positive step we can take to respond to it. I therefore ask all our members to join me in supporting this working definition of Islamophobia set out before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Ashton, do you wish to speak on the motion?
Nothing further to add to Councillor Donnelly's remarks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to speak on the motion? No? Okay. In no debate, Councillor Sean Donnelly, as the mover of the original motion, has the right of reply. No reply. No. Okay, I'll move the motion. We now go on to all those in favour to vote to be taken on the motion. Thank you. All those against the motion? No. Would anybody like to abstain? No. Thank you, and the motion is carried. Item 9. Colleagues, I have no further business, and I thank you all for your attendance and now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Please be upstanding for the Mayor.